I heard the threat before I tasted the air in that restaurant. Sign the deed, or we take you to court. My father didn't whisper it. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even blink. It was the first thing he said when he sat down across from me at the mahogany table in a dim Manhattan restaurant I had chosen for what I thought was a simple family dinner. I hadn't even unfolded my napkin before he dropped the bomb. My mother stared at the table like she wanted to pretend she wasn't part of this. My sister, Lila, wore this bright, rehearsed smile, the kind of smile people wear when they already think they've won. I felt a slow pressure fill my chest. One of those moments where you blink, and the room rearranges itself. Where your heartbeat becomes louder than the chatter around you. Where a normal night flips upside down. It took every ounce of control in me not to laugh, because the demand was so outrageous, so surgically cruel, that my brain rejected it at first. My penthouse. My 10 years of 60-hour weeks. My exhausted mornings, my late-night emails, my burned-out 20s, all wrapped into a deed they now insisted belonged to the family. A deed they wanted me to sign over to my younger sister, someone who had never paid a single mortgage bill in her life. I looked at Dad, waiting for the punchline. But he stared back with the confidence of someone who believed he had leverage. "Aria," he said, leaning forward, "it's time you supported the family that supported you." That line, it hit like cold water. If you're watching this and your breath just tightened, tell me where you're watching from, because this is where everything truly begins. Let me rewind for a second. Because to understand why this threat cut so deep, you need to understand who my family was, and who I had to become to survive them. I grew up in Queens, in a small two-bedroom house that always smelled like scorched toast and tension. My parents weren't abusive in the dramatic, movie-style sense. Their weapon of choice was expectation, thinly veiled, razor-sharp. They believed in family duty. Which, in our household, meant I carried the weight, and my sister reaped the softness. Lila was the golden child, delicate, adored, shielded. The one who got the praise, the attention, the "you can do anything, sweetheart" speeches. I was the workhorse. The practical one. The one they leaned on. The one who solved problems she didn't create. By 19, I was working 2 part-time jobs and commuting into Manhattan for my internship. By 23, I was climbing the ladder in a firm known for chewing people alive. By 28, I had saved enough to put down a terrifyingly large down payment for a penthouse unit in Midtown East. It wasn't glamorous at first. It was bare concrete floors and a dizzy feeling every time I looked at my bank statements, but it was mine. My biggest symbol of survival. A place above the noise where I could breathe. My parents congratulated me, sure, but it was surface level, like they were reading from a script someone else wrote. Beneath it, I felt the envy. The confusion. The quiet resentment that I had done something they never expected me to do. I built a life without needing them. And trust me, some parents never forgive a daughter for that. The shift started small. Lila came over one night, crying about student loans. She'd switched majors 4 times and was now taking time off to figure things out. She asked for help with rent, which I covered for a few months until it became a pattern. Mom hinted I should think of my sister's future. Dad said, "You're doing well now, you can support her a little." A little turned into a lot. One afternoon, Mom casually mentioned, "Your sister dreams of living in the city too, you know. But she can't afford anything, not unless family steps up." The implication hung heavy between us. But the real crack appeared the night my father walked into my penthouse unannounced, because I had made the mistake of giving him a spare key years earlier. He wandered the space like a real estate agent preparing a listing. He ran his hand across the kitchen island. He opened cabinets. He gazed out at the skyline like he owned it. Then he said a sentence that still burns. "You don't really need all this space, Aria. It's excessive for one person." That was the first time I felt it, the shift. The recalibration. The moment I realized my success wasn't something they admired, it was something they wanted access to. By the time the ambush dinner rolled around, I should have known. But betrayal hits hardest when it's delivered by the people who raised you. Back to the restaurant. My father's words repeated in my head like an echo I couldn't outrun. "Sign the deed, or we take you to court." I set my fork down, the metal quietly tapping the plate. "Court?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. Lila crossed her arms, as if she'd practiced this pose. "You knew I needed a place to start fresh, Aria. Why is this such a fight?" Start fresh. That phrase stung because I had started fresh my whole life without anyone handing me anything. Mom cleared her throat. "Your father and we spoke with someone. And technically. A dangerous word. Because this property was discussed as part of a family arrangement years ago, there's an oral trust. Which means legally." I laughed. I couldn't help it. An oral family trust? For my penthouse? Purchased with my salary? Dad narrowed his eyes. "Don't be dramatic. We supported you for years. We invested in your education. This is how families work." "No," I said quietly. "This is how manipulation works." The table went still. Dad leaned in, voice low and cold. "I'm not asking again. You sign it over to Lila, or we pursue legal action. And trust me, we will win." That confidence. That smugness. It triggered something in me, not fear, but clarity. If you've ever had a moment where something clicked, where you suddenly saw the entire chessboard, tap like so this story reaches someone who needs it. Here's what my parents had forgotten. I'm not the naive daughter they used to push around. The day I signed the mortgage papers 3 years earlier, I made a promise to myself. Never let anyone take away what you earned alone. Maybe they thought I kept no records. Maybe they assumed I was careless. Maybe they didn't realize that the same grit that got me through a brutal career had also made me organized to the point of obsession. Because while they were plotting their oral trust angle, I had been quietly, methodically, documenting everything. Every wire transfer. Every mortgage payment. Every statement. Every tax form. Every time-stamped email from the bank. And then there was the part they really didn't know. My accountant had flagged something suspicious a few months ago, liens filed under my parents' names. Debt stacked under the surface. Financial strain they hadn't mentioned to me or anyone else. At the time, I felt sorry for them. I didn't connect the dots. But sitting at that restaurant table, hearing them threaten me with court? Everything snapped into place. This wasn't about family duty. This wasn't about helping my sister. This was about rescuing themselves. And suddenly, I understood. My equity wasn't a gift to them. It was a lifeline they were trying to steal. The waiter returned with water, and my father spoke through clenched teeth, "We're done discussing this. You will sign the deed." It was the certainty in his tone that broke something in me. My whole childhood, I had been the good daughter. The dependable one. The one who apologized first, even when I wasn't wrong. The one who made myself small so other people felt comfortable. But hearing my own father speak to me like a hostile negotiator? Hearing my mother, the woman who taught me to be honest, justify a lie dressed as legal strategy? Hearing my sister look at my home like it was already hers? I felt something shift. I felt the version of me who always tried to keep peace slowly exhale her last breath. Dad mistook my silence for surrender. "Good," he said. "We'll meet with the attorney this week. Bring the deed. We'll sign everything there." I nodded. And for the first time in my life, I let them believe they had one. Now, here's the part of the story that feels like a scene from a movie. Because there's always a moment, a clean, sharp turning point, when a person stops pleading and decides to act. For me, it came the moment I stepped out of the restaurant and felt the cold New York night against my face. I stood under a street lamp, hearing taxis honk in the distance, the city humming around me. And I whispered to myself, "This ends on my terms." That wasn't anger. That was clarity. That was the moment I stopped trying to earn their approval and started preparing for truth. If you've ever reached that point, that quiet breaking moment, comment if you've ever felt this kind of betrayal. My plan wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was administrative. That's the thing people underestimate. Power isn't always a raised voice or a slammed door. Sometimes it's a well-organized binder. Over the next 3 days, I prepared. I printed every mortgage statement from the bank. I organized 3 years of payments, $157,000 total, every dollar from my account. I included the purchase contract, clearly stating sole ownership. I added email threads confirming the deposit came exclusively from my savings. Then came the smoking gun. The financial reports showing the liens and debts tied to my parents, documents that explained the real motive behind their sudden family trust. I didn't highlight anything. I didn't add dramatic notes. I wanted the facts to speak louder than my anger ever could. The binder was navy blue. Clean. Professional. Heavy. And I slept better that week than I had in months. The attorney's office was sleek, modern, and unsettlingly transparent, glass walls everywhere, like everything inside was meant to be seen. My parents arrived first. Dad looked confident. Mom looked rehearsed. Lila looked like she was already mentally arranging furniture in my penthouse. I walked in with the binder tucked under my arm. Their attorney, a man in his 50s with silver hair and an unreadable expression, greeted us and motioned to the long conference table. Dad cleared his throat. "Aria is ready to sign over the property." I didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, I placed the binder in front of the attorney and said calmly, "Before we discuss anything, you should review these." Dad's face tightened. "What is that?" "Documentation," I said. "All the documentation." The attorney opened the binder. Silence fell like snow. He flipped through the first section, purchase documents with my name alone. Then the mortgage payments. The bank transfers. The tax filings. He slowed down when he reached the debt and lien section. His eyebrows lifted. He glanced at my parents. Then he closed the binder. When he spoke, his voice was clinical, almost cold. "Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, you did not disclose any of this to me." Mom swallowed hard. Dad's jaw locked. The attorney continued, "There is no legal basis for an oral trust here. And based on these documents, pursuing a claim would not only fail, it could expose your financial situation in court." Dad's face drained of color. Lila whispered, "Mom, what is he talking about?" Mom shook her head fiercely, as if she could undo reality through denial. I finally took my seat, folded my hands, and said, "So no, I will not be signing over my home. If you're still with me and this moment hit the way it hit me, tap like, stories like this reach the right people when you do." The attorney nodded once, as though finalizing the matter internally. He slid a form across the table. "I recommend your family signs this release. It states they will make no further claim to the property. For their protection, and yours." Dad didn't argue. He didn't posture. He didn't threaten court again. He signed. Without a word. We walked out of the conference room in silence. My mother couldn't meet my eyes. My father stayed rigid, staring straight ahead like the world had betrayed him, not the other way around. Lila looked angry, but it was the anger of someone whose fantasy was taken away, not someone who understood the consequences of her actions. Outside the building, on East 46th Street, the city moved like nothing had happened. Dad finally spoke. Barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do this." I looked at him, the man who raised me, the man I once trusted. "Yes," I said. "I did. Because you were willing to lie to take something from me." He flinched, as if the truth struck harder than any accusation. Mom touched my arm gently. "Aria, we were desperate." "I know," I said. "But desperation doesn't justify betrayal." They walked away slowly. That was the last time we spoke for months. My penthouse felt different after that. Not haunted. Not tainted. Stronger. The walls felt like they finally knew who they belonged to. The air felt lighter. The skyline outside my window felt earned again. I kept the navy binder in a locked drawer, not out of fear, but as a reminder. A reminder of what I overcame. A reminder that boundaries aren't cruelty. A reminder that sometimes the people who raised you don't respect you until you enforce the cost of disrespect. And slowly, life settled. My sister moved to a smaller apartment in Brooklyn. My parents handled their finances without me. No one asked me for money again. We're civil now, but distant, not out of punishment, but out of peace. Some relationships function better with space. If there's one thing I want whoever hears my story to take away, it's this. Family does not give them the right to your labor, your home, or your peace. Love is not a contract. And boundaries are not betrayal. You are allowed to protect what you've built. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to refuse to fund other people's irresponsibility. And if you ever find yourself facing a threat from someone who should protect you, remember this. Facts. Timestamps. Documentation. They speak louder than guilt, louder than manipulation, louder than fear. Choose truth. Choose self-respect. Choose yourself. And if this story hit you somewhere you didn't expect, subscribe for more stories like this one.